Hey Dan, how's it going?
Good. Great to see you.
Nice to see you too. Thanks for doing this. Obviously, last year you guys were pretty restricted in terms of what you could do in the pre-draft. How nice is it to have some semblance of normalcy back? I know you're not at OVO, so not complete normalcy, but let's call it quasi-normalcy.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. The walking into the first draft workout the other day, it felt really refreshing. It was an experience that we really value every year as a part of the draft process, and to not be able to do it last year, it was tough. And so to get back at it this year and kind of you forget how intense they are and how much the players really, you know, bring to it to try and earn a spot. And yeah, as soon as you walk in the gym, it just feels like, okay, yeah, we're getting back to it. So it felt really good.
Outside of being able to see some guys up close that you wouldn't have had the opportunity to in the past, how much does having a high lottery pick change your process this year, if at all?
Not a ton, because it's like we do so much work beforehand, before the lottery comes. I think there's definitely, as the direction of the season goes, you kind of know where you're generally are going to land, and so you begin to prepare for that area of the draft already. And so, you know, we kind of knew we were going to be a worst case scenario of mid lottery team, so we did a lot of work in preparation of that, of who we were seeing, and able to get out on the road and really get to know, and then to be able to move up to 4, it if anything made our job a little bit, I hate to say easier, but just at least it narrowed down the number of people we're really going to be drilling in on at that point. But it definitely, you know, from a workout standpoint, from a the weeks leading up to the draft standpoint, nothing really changes. It just, you know, maybe if anything, a little extra added pressure of just making sure we you know, leave no stone unturned, and make sure that we know everything we're doing with that pick.
Great. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh. We'll go to Blake.
Hey, Dan. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Good to see you, Blake.
Yeah, you too. As a kind of a follow-up to, you know, just getting to see these guys in the gym once again, I don't know how specific you want to get, but these workouts that you run guys through, and then, you know, maybe if a guy goes undrafted, charting their progress through Summer League or the G League, how much is that ability to kind of measure their developmental capacity a part of your process? Like, you know, do they take to coaching? Do they make the same mistakes? That kind of thing you can only really see up close.
Yeah, there's definitely an element of trying to get as much of a snapshot of these guys as a player that we can. You know, there's even like, you know, everything from in when they're playing competitively, and it's a 3-on-3 setting, so it's not a full game recreation, but in that setting, like you're doing some quick explanation of what we're looking for, and how they can essentially take that quick coaching and turn it into actions on the floor. It's not the same as a game, but there is some read and react and basketball IQ sorts of things that we can try and learn from this setting. And then from there, the more, you know, a lot of the times this is our first opportunity to really like be around some of these players up close, and you get to know them a little bit. And then, yeah, whether we end up drafting the guy or not, you know, there's only a few draft picks, but there's a lot of guys we're intrigued with, to, you know, whether it's bringing them in as undrafted guys or watching them in summer league and then bringing them in for training camp, or all those different opportunities that, even if it's not year 1, you know, year 2, year 3 and beyond, bringing them in for this first opportunity to get to know them, it does leave a lasting impression. And so it is a bit of something to build upon down the road in years to come, as we kind of get an early impression of what they could potentially be in the NBA.
Oh, thanks, Dan.
We'll go to Ryan.
Hey, Dan, how you doing?
Doing great.
Any big draft birthday party plans for Masai today?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know if maybe I didn't get invited. We'll see.
I'm just curious about how. I know Josh kind of asked about moving up to 4, but has that made it easier to get certain people in, either in person or to talk to, with the move up at all, or not much?
No, it's kind of funny. If anything, it made it a little more difficult. Like it's like, I think there's always a like a public's perception of who's in what range, sort of thing, and agents have the same sort of mentality with their players of well, you're not going to consider my guy at a certain number, or so we kind of moved into this range where there's a lot of players that are now, they think, you know, we're not going to consider them, but then it's at the same time our other picks are too low for them. So it's like we're in this like kind of weird bookend range where we're getting a lot of players that they don't think we're actually, you know, like a viable option for them. So we've been hitting some walls on trying to get in some guys in a range, in the mid range, that we actually really like, and you never know what happens on draft night or what we can do to try to go back and get them. But I understand it's a part of the process every year, and you know, agents have to prioritize the teams that are best for them, and it's something that you work with, and a little bit of a back and forth dance that we do every year in terms of trying to convince people why it's important that they come see us and be around our organization, even if it's just for a day. But it is what it is.
And then just a follow up. Obviously, last year you didn't have a first, but you still have to do the work in case you get one or whatever. Right? How much different and more open and just better feel do you have for the prospects this year? Just because I know things weren't exactly normal this year, obviously, but they were a little more open to scout and evaluate than the previous year.
Yeah, it definitely. It was kind of strange because last year we were able to do some scouting prior to the shutdown, but then the pre-draft process was pretty much non-existent. Whereas this year, the scouting was a little less, but now the pre-draft process is a little more back to normal. So it's kind of a mix of the two. I mean, we as a team, we tried our best to have our scouts out, seeing, you know, when it was safe, when it was convenient, and, you know, with their comfort level of being out on the road. And so I feel fairly confident with where our group is in terms of knowing these players, having seen as much as we can. And then now with the pre-draft process being a little more normal, you know, doing our best to kind of play some, I had to call it catch up, but at least like doing what we can to really utilize you know, the process now and kind of get back into more of a normal scouting feel.
Great. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Ryan. Let's go to Steven next.
Hey, Dan, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
You mentioned how like you obviously you were doing a lot of work before. You kind of went broadly, and then when you got when you found out where you were picking, you went a little more narrow. I was just wondering, like what are the advantages, I guess, of kind of narrowing in on a range? So like how does that help your process?
I mean, if anything, it leads to some more thorough and in-depth debates, and as a group, we really get to focus on a smaller group of players that, you know, not that we've got the blinders on and we're only worried about those guys, because like I said, on draft night, so much can happen and we can end up having a couple more picks elsewhere, or like in addition to other picks, and you never know. So you don't ever want to focus solely on these guys, but at least most of our debates and our discussions as a group, they always kind of come back to the same group of guys that our job now is to just kind of compare side by side over and over and over and over until it might feel exhausting, but at the same time it's just in thoroughness, and I think that helps. Whereas when you're picking in the 20s or whatever, there's so many variables of the guys that you could even be looking at, that you have to kind of be ready for all these different plans A, B, C, D, and on, because you never know who's going to jump in and get taken, the 3 or 4 picks ahead of you, and you don't truly know the names you're going to be considering. Whereas sitting at 4, we have a good idea of who may or may not be off the board early, and we kind of know, for the most part of which players we just have to really know and consider when our pick comes up.
Just a quick follow-up. These debates that you mentioned, among the team here, are there like factions, or that may not be the right word, but are there groups of people who are like I guess levying for certain guys, or it's just a matter of just like you guys have done the work on specific people and you're kind of presenting arguments for them?
Yeah, I mean, maybe debate wasn't the right term as much as just like thorough discussions as a group. A lot of, even if we're going down a certain direction on a player, you still want to have someone in the group play devil's advocate from time to time, just for no other reason than to think of like what ifs or worst case scenarios or best case scenarios, and just kind of keep, like I said, even if it isn't what a group of people or a certain person on our staff, if it's not what they actually think, it's always good to still talk it through and still have those discussions where, and we've done exercises where you have a debate back and forth, and through the year, we always kind of know who on our staff likes certain players or not. And so you put them on the opposite side of that feeling and make them debate the counterpoints, like just to that way, when you're watching film and getting to know players, you're kind of seeing both sides of the perspective, and just making sure that it's, again, like a thorough understanding of who these players are from top to bottom.
Thank you.
We'll go to Aaron.
Hey, Dan. Sort of following up on Steven's question a little bit. How fluid is that sort of top 4 or 5 for you guys? And do you anticipate opinions will continue to change, or do you feel pretty confident, whatever your board is structured like right now, that you're confident with whoever is slotted in there is probably going to be there later this month, in that order?
I think it's definitely very fluid still. I think that there's a lot of, like I said, even though the group of players that we're, really honing in on is smaller than normal than it would be if we had the 25th pick or whatever, it's still big enough to where there's opportunities for people to move around in that. It's, the film study doesn't stop, the discussions don't stop, and we're going to have some guys in and get to know them a little better. That could help, jockey positions of that list a little bit. And then at the same time, on draft night, you never know what curveballs come up and guys get taken elsewhere, or opportunities to move around on draft night. You never know what's going to come up to. You always have to kind of have a stacking order that you feel comfortable with, regardless of if you end up at 4 or elsewhere, to just be ready for. So I think it's definitely not a finished process in terms of the number of guys we're talking at, or we're taking a look at. But there's a sense of, okay, we know who we're kind of considering, and then now within that group, let's really, spend the next 2-3 weeks of trying to sort out, who we consider to be the best among that group.
Sure. And is there something you feel like you guys have learned in the past month or since the combine and stuff about this class big picture, whether it's strengths, weaknesses, positional strengths, or attributes is there anything you've learned in the past little while?
Not really. I mean, I think, like I said, a lot of these players we've been tracking for years, not even just months, to where through that process, we have a pretty good feel for who they are. And then, if anything, the pre-draft process, these last few months, it's a lot more of personalities and getting to know them from doing a lot of background and a lot of talking to sources like on coaching staffs to kind of learn who they are as players that you don't usually see from afar, which is usually the last couple of years of scouting these guys. Like we're in a seat just watching the game and scouting them as players, and then now we've figured out who is talented enough to be in the conversation, and now for the further discussion and research we're doing, it helps bring certain qualities in players up that might move them up or down the list because of it.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Aaron. We'll go back to Ryan.
Forgot about Malachi with my no first last year question. A late first, but a first.
Yeah. It's there's a fine line between the late first and early seconds, anyways.
Anyway, I was just curious. Does Kyle's uncertain status impact how you guys plan for this draft, the prep at all? Knowing there's obviously two separate scenarios with him.
Not really. Honestly, like we've always been a group that takes talent first. Like the best available players are usually who we go with. We've never really made draft selections based on the current roster because there's so many uncertainties with, we could have our whole core lined up and draft for someone to plug in, and then a blockbuster trade comes and all of a sudden we've got holes all over the board. So it's never something that at least we try to factor in when we're going to select anybody.
Okay. Thanks, Dan.